Welcome back, class. This is Mrs. Ohms. We are on Unit 12, Rehabilitation. The first part of that is over the nervous system, which is Chapter 22 in your book. Neuron is the basic working unit of the nervous system. A neuron is the nerve cells. Neuron's job is to send and receive nerve impulses from receptors through the spinal cord to the brain. There are two main parts of the nervous system. With the central nervous system, that's kind of cut off there, consists of your brain and spinal cord. Oh, there it is. And the other main part is the peripheral nervous system. And this is the nerves connected to the spinal cord that extend through the body. So you see the pink is the central nervous system and the red is the peripheral. Three main parts of the brain. We have the cerebrum. That's the largest section of the brain. It's sometimes referred to as the big brain. Its main function is for thought and intelligence. It's divided into a left and right hemisphere. The right side controls activity on the left side of the body, and the left side controls activity on the right side of the body. Cerebellum, sometimes referred to as the little brain. That's the little orange area, and it's kind of the base of the back of your neck there. It's a center for coordination. It regulates movements and controls balance. The brain stem contains the midbrain, which is, there's three lines there. The midbrain is at the top, the pons is the second line, and the medulla oblongata is the long section of the brain stem at the bottom. It controls breathing, heart rate, swallowing, gagging, coughing, and vomiting. So if somebody has a brainstem injury, often those are the ones that lead to death because it does control your heart rate and breathing. Spinal cord extends down from the medulla oblongata. You can see the medulla oblongata is green there, and the spinal cord has different sections that go with the vertebrae that protect it. It's located inside of the vertebral canal. It's connected to the brain, conducts messages between the brain and the body, and also controls reflex activity such as blinking and coughing and those same things. The brain and spinal cord are protected by bone. You can see the vertebrae there. They're also surrounded and floating kind of in cerebral spinal fluid, and protective membranes are the meninges. So that moving on to peripheral nervous system. Cranial nerves, we have 12 cranial nerves, and they direct aspects of the senses dealing with hearing and balance. We have the spinal nerves, which there are 31 pairs. They transmit messages from the brain to the spinal cord and from the spinal cord to the brain. Peripheral nervous system is broken into the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. Somatic helps with conscious movement of the skeletal system, so we have more control over the somatic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system is broken into two parts, the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic works to conserve energy and relax, slows body functions, so it's the calming down part of us. And the sympathetic is your fight or fight response. It's the one when something traumatic or stressful happens and your body responds, the adrenaline rush. If you get, nursing, you get a code or something, that's the fight or flight. You get, sympathetic, there's an adrenaline rush and also increase in glucose to give you energy to deal with the current situation. We have 5 senses: taste, smell, hearing, sight, and touch. Those who fall under the nervous system because they are sensory comes from the nerves. Somebody with sensory impairment, examples would be hearing loss or vision loss. I guess it could also be loss of smell, loss of taste. Those kind of things also go with sensory impairment. Changes to the nervous system due to aging. Your reflexes become slower. You have some memory loss, especially short term, diminished sense of touch, hearing loss, sense of vision, smell, and taste weaken. Disorders of the nervous system. The first one we'll talk about is your CVA. It stands for cerebral vascular accident. That is what we'll also refer to as a stroke, or some people will call it a brain attack. But it's when the blood supply to part of the brain is blocked or a blood vessel leaks or ruptures within the brain. A stroke can be either ischemic or hemorrhagic. Ischemic is the most common, and it's caused from a clot in a blood vessel in the brain blocking off blood flow to the area of the brain. And then hemorrhagic would be the blood vessel is ruptured and they're bleeding into the brain, which is not allowing oxygen and blood flow to that area of the brain. Stroke is an emergency. Every minute counts. This is the fast acronym. I think we kind of talked about this before. Face, does one side of the face droop? Ask the person to smile. Arms, is one arm weak or numb? Ask the person to raise both arms. Does one drift downward? Speech, is the speech slurred? Ask the person to repeat a simple sentence. Is the sentence repeated correctly? And time, if the person shows any of these symptoms, call 911 or get to the hospital immediately. Problems associated with CVA or stroke. Hemiparesis is weakness on one side of the body. Hemiplegia is total paralysis on one side of the body. Expressive aphasia is the inability to express their needs. And receptive aphasia is the inability to understand what others are saying. It gets jumbled in their brain when it comes in. Other problems associated with stroke would be one-sided neglect, loss of ability to tell where the affected body parts are. If somebody with a stroke may stand up and just totally leave their weak leg behind, so sometimes you have to help them move it or remind them to move it themselves. Inappropriate emotional responses, something like crying, anger, outbursts, things like that. Loss of bowel or bladder function is part of a stroke. Dysphagia, which is difficulty swallowing, and hemianopsia is loss of the vision field on one side. I put the link to this on the news page for your homework for you to watch that. Another disorder of the nervous system is Parkinson's disease. It's a progressive disorder that causes part of the brain to degenerate. Progressive means that it gets worse over time. It's a lack of production of dopamine in the brain. It causes tremors, rigid muscles, a mask-like face, shuffling gait, and pill rolling, which when they're rubbing their kind of fingers together. This is the stance of somebody with a Parkinson's. They have rigidity and trembling of the head. Their forward tilt of the trunk, reduced arm swing when they walk. Their arms are almost locked at their side, just like his are. Rigidity and trembling of extremities, they'll shake, and shuffling gait, they're just shuffling, they're not picking their feet up when they walk. There's also a video, I put that link on the news for you to watch about Parkinson's disease. The next disorder we want to talk about is multiple sclerosis. It is also a progressive disorder, which means it gets worse over time. Loss of the protective covering on the nerves. So on the top one, you can see the myelin sheath. On the bottom, you can see where it is deteriorating. And without the protective covering, the nerves cannot send clear messages to the brain. It's multiple sclerosis is usually diagnosed in young adulthood. The cause is unknown. It's very unpredictable. It can be very debilitating or just mildly debilitating. Symptoms vary: fatigue, poor balance, and trouble walking, and there is no cure for multiple sclerosis. Head and spinal cord injury. Head injury can be open or closed injury. A concussion occurs from a banging movement of the brain against the skull. Traumatic brain injury, or a TBI, is a violent blow or jolt to the head that causes damage to the brain. TBI can cause permanent disability. Spinal cord injury is where the spinal cord is cut or damaged, and it results in paralysis. The higher the injury, the greater the loss. Paraplegia is loss of function to the lower body and legs, and quadriplegia is loss of function to the upper and lower extremities. So paraplegia would be below the waist, paralysis and quadriplegia would be below the neck. Damage to spinal cord causes paralysis to the area below the level of injury. So your cervical spine is where it is in your neck. So if that's where the spinal cord injury, you're going to be quadriplegic. If it happens in the lumbar, you're most likely going to be just paraplegia. Okay, we're going to stop there.